Alright, I'm back. Doing another video. Well, that wasn't supposed to happen. Alright, hold on. Anyways, I'm back. I'm doing another reading from my book, The Greatest Storm. Hello. Get this introduction out of the way, which I never seem to get right. My name's J.E. Krueger, author of the books of 9 and 10 Penance. And these are the 3 novels I have out in the series right now. I'm working on a few other books, so there will be another book in the next spring. Takes a while to write them. But I enjoy writing the stories. I just don't enjoy... Boy, I gotta tell you. Here we go. Let's do that. I enjoy writing the series, like I was saying. But what I don't like to do is push out a bunch of content as quickly as possible. Like I said, it's called the Books of 9 and 10 Penance for a reason, because I really enjoy the process of methodically thinking out how each book is going to work, and so it just takes a long time to produce each book. Of course, I do all my own cover art. Anyways, now that we got that out of the way, a little more setup. I've been reading this book, The Greatest Storm, on the weekends, and the whole story flips back and forth between Allison White and Stephen Blackman. I'll try and get into it here. We left off on... So the book flips back and forth between Alice and Stephen. It's about 2 lovers separated by an ocean, a romantic comedy, and Allison just had met these mermen that had lost their legs because of the evil mermaid, and the mermaid had turned them into mermen. Anyways, now we're going back to Stephen's chapter. And this chapter is called The Men with the Long White Beards. And, okay, so here we go. Oh, hold on. Let me get some more water. All right. We'll see if anyone chimes in. No? Not one person. Usually takes a while, but I'm trying to build content and get viewers, so make it a note if you know anyone who would like to listen to these chapter readings. Please share it with them. It's a young adult fantasy series. Yeah, because I'm a struggling author trying to make it. But I'll tell you this, I am in it for the long haul. I am not here to produce a bunch of content. I'm more interested in making quality content. All right, we'll get into it. The Men with the Long White Beards. Stephen had just met up with the men who chose to follow him around, maybe because they had nothing else better to do. He was greeted with the usual questions he didn't know how to answer, but he was willing to try, the best he knew how. They soon left that part of the island and together continued searching for the women who desperately waited for their safe return. Stephen was exhausted from his run through the jungle the night before, so they took him on a path that led to a place the ragged men called home on the island. One of the men even went as far to reassure him they were headed in the right direction. Just around this bend, and then another, and then one more, and we shall be home sweet home, one of them said. Stephen looked at the men who didn't know their own names, scratched his head, and brought up a very good point. You said that already, 3 turns ago in the path we follow. Are you sure we're headed in the right direction? I've followed this path many times. It always leads us to the same spot. Trust us, this is a path you'll want to take, and it always leads us home. Though Stefan was the captain of this search party, he just wasn't sure if they really knew exactly where they were. After all, they had gone down these trails before and never, not once, found a single woman they loved walking by. But he wasn't about to question the men now, for this was a path he himself had never taken. Fine, lead the way, but if this path leads to nowhere, then I shall assume command, Stefan said. You shall lead the way when it comes to matters of our hearts. That is something no man here will argue, but I assure you, have no doubt, this path will lead the way. Stefan followed the men who followed him until the path fell off a cliff. He just had to ask a question he really felt must be asked. Are you sure this is the right path? Of course it is. Why do you ask? It's just that this one seems to lead to nowhere. In fact, the trail has ended and gone for a dive down to the bottom of this cliff. Oh, yes, I forgot to tell you about something. It would appear that way to you, wouldn't it? You'll have a good laugh over this one. The men who followed him, who he now follows, laughed amongst themselves. Their laughter was appropriate for something he didn't quite fully comprehend. Stefan, still unsure if he was to follow them or they to follow him, just had to ask another question that ought to be asked. Is there something I don't understand about this path? Well, don't just stand there. Explain yourselves. I'll explain, men, and then he'll understand. You see, we know this path will eventually lead to somewhere. We just haven't figured it out yet. I thought you said you've been down this path before, Stefan replied. Yes, we have, many times, and it always leads us to the same spot. Stefan was utterly confused, so he foolishly asked again why they led him to a dead end. Why here? Why to this spot? It leads to nowhere. One of the men jumped in. Why, yes, it does, at first to you, maybe. However, if we simply turn around and go back from where we came, it will lead us to someplace new. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Look, it's very simple. I believe what my Adelbraid friend is trying to say is, if we simply stay on the trail we've been walking, it will lead us back to camp, no matter where it takes us now. One of the men felt a point should be made and the need to explain, though at this point, Stefan felt they had all gone insane. I can see you still don't understand. Maybe I better explain it in more detail. Yes, please explain, in more detail, as you put it, Stefan said as he rolled his eyes in grief. You see, this path may appear to lead to nowhere at first, but if you look at it with the perspective you didn't have before, it simply is the beginning of another trail, not the end like you originally thought. That can't be the answer. That's just absurdly stupid. You mean to tell me you've walked every trail on this island and still you've managed to lose your way? The men with rocks for brains who randomly moved from spot to spot and still do not know where they're headed half the time had another good laugh. Stefan finally figured it out, so he set them all straight. This is truly absurd. It is I who should be laughing, for you walk down a path that you've all walked on before and claim to know where it leads. I finally understand. If you truly want to find the ones you love, you will listen to what I have to say. The idea to keep walking on a path and hope it will take them somewhere, simply by walking on it until they can walk no more, all of a sudden seemed foolish. The men realized at that moment why they followed him. May I please have your attention? I have something important to say. I think I've just figured it out. You are all insane. That much I do know. What I don't know is that if I were to walk down this path, where would it lead? The ragged men of the island raised their hands, eager to answer his question, to which Stefan replied, It was a rhetorical question. Put your hands down. I don't believe any of you truly know the answer anyhow. Then where will it take us, if not by our lover's side? Yes. And do you know where it leads? Stefan walked around the men in circles. I don't know, but I do know this. Walking down the same old path clearly hasn't led the way yet. Furthermore, hoping it will take you where you want to go is no way to walk on it at all. If we are to continue on our search, then we must put our heads together and come up with a plan that will work. Yes, but then what will work? I'm glad you follow me still, but I haven't a clue. You'll have to give me a moment to think about it. Stefan continued to circle the men as he thought about the predicament they had walked themselves into time and time again. Have you come up with a plan while you circle us still? One of the men pointed out. Without a thought in his head, he said, Aha, I've got it. What were we talking about? The men looked at each other confused and said, We haven't a clue. That is why we follow you. Stefan thought about it some more, and then he blurted out the first thing that came to mind. Yes, I believe I have it. What we need is a way to navigate these trails without losing our way. Okay, how exactly? Stefan looked at the men as if he had a plan, and in fact, he did. What we need is a map. With a map, we would never lose our way. With a map, we would know where to search where we haven't searched before. Why, with a map, I tell you, we would stand a better chance of finding the ones we love. Is any of this making any sense? One of the men said, It seems so simple of a plan, but it just might work. I knew there was a reason we follow you around, and one of the men had a question that just had to be asked. I confer with this plan, but I have to ask, have you gone insane?